Hello, Harpreet. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well and very happy to see you. I know we've been chatting before and especially on social media, but it's very nice to see you on video. I have yet to meet you in person though, and I hope that day will happen. It seems like every time I'm in the GTA, you're somewhere in Europe. So hopefully one
I
day.
gallivant when I can, you know. We will see each other eventually in real life, and it'll be awesome.
Yes, I can't wait for that to happen. But in the meantime, I'm very happy that you're my guest here for this interview for Wicked. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you, Harpreet, well, in addition to the fact that you're very nice and I really always enjoy talking to you, is that you're very popular on social media. Many of our criminal law colleagues know you either in person or from your posts, especially on Twitter. And your posts are actually interesting and very popular for several reasons. You talk a lot about your personal life, your life as a dad and a lawyer, and how you try to balance all of that together. And you also give a lot of advice and tips to new lawyers, and which is also something that a lot of lawyers have been appreciating. So, what I would like for you to do today is to actually expand on your tweets and just talk. I'm giving you the opportunity to, instead of tweeting and typing in limited characters, that we can actually get to hear live from you in your very funny style that people enjoy when they follow you. So I'll let you speak, Harpreet.
Well, thank you. You're being overly kind. I promise you, I'm less funny in real life than I am on screen. But I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to monologue. Uh, Joking. Yeah, I mean, it comes out that I tweet. I have this Twitter account, and it started out I didn't know what to do with it, and I wanted to just to type out some very smart, interesting legal stuff, and no one cared about that. So then I just started typing stuff about my day and my kids and whatnot, and apparently that's more interesting. But I think one of the reasons it resonates, I hope, is that it's something that a lot of us are going through. A
Mhm.
lot of us have kids and you're trying to balance the kids and trying to figure out fatherhood or motherhood or whatever parenthood in general, and we all struggle with that. And I struggle with it just as much as anyone else. I'm no expert on parenting. I just have the two, and I try my best, and we all try our best. But one of the go ahead.
For those who don't know the ages of your children, how old are they, Harpreet?
Yeah, so they're now 12 and 9.
Okay.
And yes, so they're 12 and 9, and they're figuring things out, and I'm trying to figure things out as well. And balancing them is tough.
Yeah.
I'm married. I got a wife, but she works out of the house a lot, and because of the nature of the work we do, a lot of the times I'm home. I'm working from home, so in a lot of ways, I'm the primary for my kids.
Hmm.
I'm doing pickups and drop-offs and shove food in their faces when I can, and on top of that, you do set dates and read disclosure. So such is life, right?
Right. And so, well, maybe if you can expand a little bit more on that, because I mean, I guess also sometimes you do client interviews by Zoom from home or other interviews. So, how are you able to do that with the kids around? I mean, when they're at school, I guess it's easier. You have
Yeah.
more, quiet space. But let's say it's at a time where they're at home. How do you balance that? Sometimes it is a challenge for parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier now, to be honest, because
Hmm.
they're old enough to understand that when dad is on a Zoom call, that
Yeah.
they need their quiet time. I know that a lot more modern parents are opposed to their kids being on devices and trying to limit their devices, but this is a time when you need to let your kids be on their devices.
Okay.
It's like, go ahead, go on your video games, play your Switch. Here you go, enjoy. And that gives me the time I need to do my thing. And I don't know how previous generations were able to raise kids without devices. I don't know how they did it. I'm happy for them, but I didn't have devices. But yeah, it makes it a lot easier. So that's the lazy way, and I'm fine with it. I have no shame. But when
Mhm.
I'm on my Zoom calls, they manage to keep occupied. When they were younger, it was a lot harder, and that's when you really try and do your Zoom meetings when during the day when they're at school, and that's when
Yeah.
you really try and do that, or after they're down for the night, which is more awkward, I think, because who wants to meet with a client at 9:30 p.m.? You avoid that if possible.
Yeah, true. I mean, you
Yeah.
try to avoid that. Sometimes you have no choice. But one of the things that I've also seen from following you on Twitter, Harpreet, is that sometimes you do travel for trials. For example, if I'm not mistaken, not a long time ago, you had a pretty lengthy jury trial out of town. That's
Yeah.
hard when you're a parent, when you have to be away for a long time. Um, how do you do that? I mean, that's something that a lot of lawyers struggle with.
It was in hindsight, it may have been a bit of a mistake. I did 4 months in Windsor,
Hmm.
and if you're not familiar with the GTA, I live in Brampton, which would be around a 4 hour drive, 3.5, 4 hour drive. So at the time, I was like, all right, it's a homicide, it's big case management, it's going to be long enough to pay a bill or two. And I was like, and I talked to my family about it. And, we decided, all right, we're going to do this. I mean, I'm going to take this case on. It was very difficult. And
Yeah,
it was supposed to be 3 months. It went an extra month too, which made it even more difficult. It was hard for my family. It was hard for me. It was hard on my kids because they're used to seeing me every day,
yeah.
right? Every day. Dad is there in the morning. Dad picks them up. Dad usually drops them off. Uh, Dad is there at nighttime to read with them, et cetera, et cetera. They're used to that routine, and kids need that routine. It was a tough time for all of us, and I don't have a good answer because I didn't cope well with it, and it's hard to say, but I'm saying I'm going to go out there on a limb and say I would not recommend it, especially if you are the primary.
Hmm.
4 months away, it was too much for me. It's
Yeah,
too much for me. So, yeah, it wasn't easy. And then you commute on the weekends when you can, but you can't come home every weekend
yeah.
because you're on a jury trial and you have to read motions and prep motions and case law and all that sort of business. uh, would 100% would not recommend. All of you who are, everyone who's watching this, if you have kids, you have to make your own independent decisions, and you have to make sure that you have the infrastructure to be able to handle that over an extended period of time. We managed, but it wasn't easy, and it definitely wasn't fun.
And so when you say you managed, so what were some of the things that you had to do in order for the situation to be sustained for as long as 4 months?
So I was lucky that we had that infrastructure. So my wife went into it knowing that, all right, she's going to have to pick up the slack in a lot of ways. She's going to have to do more of the pickups and drop offs. That was hard for her
Yeah,
professionally and
yeah.
personally. We're also lucky that we have both my parents and her parents to help as well.
Mhm.
And, it's not easy for them. They don't complain, but they're older, and it's harder for them to drive and whatnot, but they did a ton as well. I have my brother-in-law as well. Everyone was pitching in, and it was physically and mentally taxing on everyone. But it was also hardest on my kids themselves because their routine is up in the air, and on some days it's their grandparents picking up. Some of the parent days it's my wife picking them up. Some days it's my brother-in-law. But that's the infrastructure, and that's how we got by. So if you're going to do a lengthy case where you're going to be out of jurisdiction, especially, you got to
Mhm.
make sure that you have that jurisdiction. And a lot of people don't. And I know I'm lucky, but you got to keep that in mind.
Well, and also when you're involved in a lengthy case, it's not just difficult on a personal level, even on a professional level, especially if you're operating on your own or in a small firm environment, because that takes you away from all of your other
Mhm.
files. So maybe if you can talk a little bit about that, because I know that this is something that many of us struggle with when we're
Yeah.
caught in this lengthy trial, especially a jury trial. It's almost like you're unavailable for all your other clients. And sadly, that's when everybody gets arrested. Everybody needs you for a bail hearing. So tell us about this a bit more, Harpreet.
So it's often a lot of lawyers I know they call these practice killers, right?
Yeah.
Because they kill your practice. You're feeling
Mhm.
great about your big case management and your prep hours, and you're great. I get my 4 hours per diem per night as per legal aid, and you get your court time during the day.
Yeah,
But meanwhile, you are missing on all those things. So
right.
you get up in the morning, you roll into court as best prepared as you can be, 10 to 1, and then from 1 to 2:15, you do what you can, a couple phone calls, you shove some food in your own face, and then from 2:30 to 4:30, you're back in court, and then it gets worse. By the time you get to wherever it is you're staying, or if you're in jurisdiction, you're home, you need to sit for a little bit. So let's say you're home at 5 or 5:15,
That's
right?
a good day. On a good day.
A good day, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say you're home at 5:15. Now you have your 4 hours per diem. That takes you to 9:15, right?
Mhm.
Then you got to send out a couple of emails, make some phone calls. You need a couple hours for that. So that takes you to 11:15. You haven't eaten dinner yet,
Yeah.
right? So now you got to eat dinner. You got to put some food in your face. Now you're talking 11:30, 12 o'clock, and that's if you're lucky, right? And
Yeah.
then
That's if everything is on schedule.
everything's on schedule, and
Yeah.
then you've only devoted around 2 hours to your other files. You
hmm
haven't even, you haven't even called your partner yet.
hmm
In there you want to talk to your kids, you want to talk to your wife. So yeah, these cases, they can be practice killers. They are not for the weak, both mentally and physically and professionally. You gotta.
And where does sleep factor in, Harpreet, in these types of situations?
I don't know what the sleep is that you speak. I have no idea what we're talking about. But yeah, because 11:30 midnight is on a good day, but
Right.
usually it's later than that, right?
And that's
And
if
just
something doesn't come up during the day, in this
yeah.
case, that makes you also have to change everything you were planning on doing for the evening.
Oh
Um,
yeah, because just because legal aid gives you 4 hours, that doesn't mean you'll be done in 4 hours.
right.
Oftentimes you need more than 4 hours to prep for whatever
Comes
got
up.
thrown at you during the day.
Yeah.
Whatever surprise motion you get, or whatever co-accused counsel throws at you, or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
So there's always something new on the go. It's a marathon. These longer cases is what I've learned, and other lawyers who are listening to this, they know they've been through it too.
Right. And how long have you been practicing, Harpreet?
20 years in the summer, June, July. I think July will be
Nice.
20.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome, and that you're still doing this. But I mean, this is, I think, one of the issues that we're seeing a lot because, as you know, we've been losing many of our defense lawyer colleagues,
Mhm.
not just because of the money. I mean, money is a big factor. We're not getting paid well enough, but it's
Yeah.
also because of this lack of work-life balance. So this term that we keep hearing, work-life balance, I
Mhm.
mean, is it a myth? Is it something that we can achieve? How can you do it if you want to take on these complex cases and lengthy jury trials?
So in a way, you're asking the wrong guy, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
My generation, like when you talk to the lawyers who are 15, 20 years out,
Mhm.
I'm going to put us in a different generation. We are not good at work-life balance. Our
Mhm.
generation was not good at this. The older generation, if you talk to those 40 years out lawyers, they're even worse. Especially especially the men who are still working at this after 40, 50 years. Oftentimes you'll see they're the ones who have the least healthy relationship with their families for unfortunate reasons because they just dove into the work. But even aside from that, forget that for a second.
Mhm.
The lawyers throughout 20, 30 years, these are the ones where you see the worst cases of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, burnout is happening with this generation.
Yeah.
So you're asking me, I'm the wrong guy to ask. I, I'm a warning to the more junior lawyers, the newer lawyers. I want your generation to be better than my generation, right? I want for you the thing that we never had. So I try, but I'm hoping that your generation will be better than mine.
But do you have any
It's a struggle.
ideas on how they can make things better for themselves? I mean, especially that we're getting paid less than you guys were.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what tips do you have for newer lawyers who are watching this?
So uh, ultimately, listen, you can put as fancy a bow on it as you want, but ultimately, what it comes down to is this: you just have to, at a certain point, close the laptop. You have to just turn it off at a certain point. You have to stop the work. You just
Mhm.
have to, and I know you're devoted, you care about your clients, you care about your cases, and sometimes you may just have to say no to work. Now, this has ramifications. You're not going to get paid, right? If you say no to work, and that hurts a lot. But I'm telling you, if you burn out, then you're really not going to get paid.
Mhm.
And the work you say no to now allows you to take more work over a longer period of time because you're not going to burn out. But there's no better way to put it. At a certain point, you got to stop. There will always be work in the sense that if you read that extra file of disclosure tonight, it's not as if you're not going to have something else tomorrow, right? There's always going to be something to do, but you have to train yourself at a certain point to say, I'm done work for the night. That's it. And if you can't do that, you will burn out and it won't be pretty. It won't be good for you. It won't be good for your clients. It won't be good for your bank account. It won't
Mhm.
be good for anything. So I don't know if that's all I got.
No, I mean, like that is actually very important. And it's important for lawyers then to know their limits and not to overburden themselves with work. And you are right in the sense that we always are afraid that we won't have enough work. So we always say yes to all kinds of cases, even if we know. I mean, sometimes we know that a case is going to be difficult, whether it's because the client is difficult or the issues are complex and are going to be demanding, but we still take these cases on for various reasons, and many of them are this fear that we won't have enough work. But like you said, there's always going to be work. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a shortage of criminal law work anytime
Yeah,
soon.
probably not. And you know what? If it makes your viewership feel better, especially your junior calls, your newer calls, that fear never goes away, right? I'm
Yeah,
20 years out, and when someone comes to me with on a domestic with a legal aid certificate that ultimately is not going to pay me a lot of money, and I'm thinking, should I say no? Should I say no? Then you're like, yeah, but he's here. This client's here today. What if tomorrow no one comes in? I better
yeah.
take, right? That fear never goes away. After 20 years, it hasn't gone away. It's normal. I get it. I understand, but you have to just pace yourself. Otherwise, you will burn out, and
Yeah.
it's not good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good advice. Now, another thing, though, that I want you to tell us a bit more about is, I mean, one of the things I've noticed from, again, from your Twitter posts is you've been also very generous and kind to tell, lawyers, let them know that you have an interesting case happening, come and watch. You've invited people to watch or to assist or to work with you on some projects, which is very nice. And which actually, I mean, you've probably noticed that nowadays it's very difficult for new lawyers to gain experience or to learn from senior lawyers or to have mentorship. I mean, there are some associations that offer mentorship programs. WiCCD is one of them.
Yep.
But it's still something that a lot of lawyers keep, especially new lawyers, keep complaining that I wish I had more mentorship. So how can what can we do to work on this? And what advice can you give to new lawyers who are seeking, who are eager to learn from more senior counsel, but who don't have that opportunity?
You have to join your association. So WiCCD is good. You're right. You guys, WiCCD does a lot of great work and offers a lot of the mentorship that people need, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm also involved with the Criminal Lawyers
Yes.
Association, CLA. So are you,
Yeah.
and they have programs as well that offer mentorship. And as you're very familiar with the recent call committee,
Right. Of course.
a lot of great work
Yeah.
in that. So, that's one thing. Your local associations are going to have some programs, some assistance to have you connect with someone who can help you be mentored. If you're with a firm, if you're lucky enough to be with a firm, or if you're in a chambers where there's other lawyers, that's going to be a source for you as well. I know that with the onset of more people working from home,
Hmm.
there's less of that, and people are just in the office less. And I know that's a debate about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and I leave that for people with greater wisdom than me. But one of the downsides for sure is you don't get the opportunity to chat with someone who's just down the hall. If you have that opportunity, take that opportunity. If
Hmm.
someone's there, talk to them.
And how
One,
important, though, let's elaborate a little bit on that
yeah,
point, Harpreet. How important is that, like that chat with other lawyers
so
to,
important.
okay.
So important. One thing old lawyers like me love to do is talk about our how we do things, right? We
Hmm.
want to talk. Old lawyers want to talk about their cases, about what they do, about how they do it. We desperately want to do it because of our giant egos. We love to do this, right? So if you're a junior lawyer, if you're a new call, we want to talk to you,
Hmm.
right? Really badly. It just feeds our giant egos and it makes us feel good about ourselves, right? To do that. I say that in jest, but we want to share, we want to impart, but you will learn all sorts of stuff that you won't otherwise be able to learn. Just the ins and outs, the tiny little things that you do that you may not be able to learn from a textbook.
Hmm.
Like something basic, like whenever a judge is talking to your client stands up, but you also stand up and you
Yeah.
stand next to your client. You're not going to read that in a case. No one's going to
Yeah.
teach you that.
Yeah.
You're either going to see it in court yourself, or a senior lawyer is going to tell you, hey, stand next to your client when the judge is talking to them. Otherwise, you're not going to know, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
crucial.
And again, so I know I interrupted you when you were talking about other stuff as well on how, like how can new lawyers, so I know you mentioned that joining their local associations can help them, can provide resources. There's also, talking to more senior lawyers. Um, but what else can they do if, they want to get that exposure, they want to get that knowledge, that learning experience and opportunities as well?
Go to court, and
Go to
that's the
court.
last
Yes.
thing I know that your previous guests have also expounded on that, and they're right, and I'm repeating that. You're not going to learn until you see other people do it,
Right.
and go to the courthouse, try and sit in on a trial, and especially if it's in person, especially if it's in person. Again, I'm not one to talk about whether Zoom is better in person. I have a personal preference, but you will learn the best in person at the courthouse. So go to Armory, go to Brampton, go to whichever wherever jurisdiction you're sitting in, and then you sit and you watch a lawyer do their thing. And one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to sit and watch a horrible lawyer, or you're
Hmm.
going to sit and watch a great lawyer. You're going to learn either way, right?
Right.
If you're watching a lawyer and maybe they're not the best lawyer in the world, or maybe they're just mediocre or average, you're still going to learn from that. You're going to learn and think to yourself, I'm not going to do these things. Or you're going to watch someone who's awesome and you'll learn and think to yourself, I need to incorporate that into my style. I need to
Hmm.
incorporate that into my toolbox. But by watching other lawyers do things, you are going to learn. And that is the best way to really to pick it up. Talking about it in the office is great. We've already discussed that. Go watch people do it, and then
Right.
you'll learn. Yeah.
And that, of course, is in addition to your own experiences, because also the best way to learn is to actually do it yourself and you having to deal with these situations. It's
Yeah.
not always the easiest way to learn, um, especially if you're doing things wrong or you don't know how to deal with that situation. But Harpreet, because you've been practicing for, quite a while, like you've been, around and you've seen the evolution of the practice. So what are some of the things that you see now that you probably like you think that maybe should change or that used to be better before, or if there are things that are being done now that are much better than before? So, what is your view on the evolution of the practice of criminal defense?
So it's changed a lot. And the biggest
Hmm.
thing is, I mean, Zoom has been the biggest
Yeah.
change, and we've all witnessed this. And again, this is a debate, a source of debate as to whether it's been good or bad, but set dates or a docket court list, as it's called in other jurisdictions,
Yeah.
has been is a godsend that you don't have to physically go to courthouse to adjourn a matter of 3 weeks for disclosure.
Right.
That is one of the biggest positive changes in the administration of justice. I'm still firmly of the view, though, that for anything substantive, go in person. I don't. I know other reasonable people differ. I get that, but being there in person for a contested bail, for a guilty plea of any sort, for a trial, for a motion, in person is better. Period. Full stop. The only thing that's contested that I'm content to do on Zoom is just strict legal submissions. I'm fine
Hmm.
with that. But that's the extent of it. But that's the biggest change is the technology of it all.
Right.
The technology has also affected our disclosure And that's a big change over the course of 20 years. Now, every
But in a
case,
good way, though, right? Like, I mean, I think it's much easier for a lot of us to receive the disclosure through the hub than as opposed to, at least I know, like we had to
yeah,
actually go to the courthouse to receive it. But of course, there are also all these problems that could happen with the formats that are being used.
there's the ease of receiving it. You're right, but there's also a lot more of it, right? So now
Right.
every case, you got text messages, cell phone extraction data, expert reports, et cetera, et cetera. The sheer volume that we get now is totally different from what we got 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Every case has body worn camera. 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour and a half of body worn camera. And somewhere buried in it is the statement of your complainant. Somewhere, right? Somewhere
Right.
in there, there's an interaction between you, your client, and a police officer. So 20 years ago, on a domestic, you got two officers' notes and a statement. It was a written statement, sometimes a video statement.
Yeah.
That was your case. You're ready to go. You read two officers' notes. You can prep your charter if you need to. You read your state complaint statement. You prep your cross. It was easier. So, for better or worse, and there are advantages. Don't get me wrong. There are advantages, but the sheer volume of disclosure is also one of the biggest changes that I've seen over the past 20 years. And then the complexity of the law as well. There's
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that is another issue. But I mean, from your point of view, Harpreet, is it then harmful to get more disclosure? I mean, sometimes people think, well, the more information, the better it is, right? Like the more you know, the more you can have details or information. Because sometimes it is a challenge. Like for me, I find that when there's no statement or, like there's just a written
yeah,
statement of a few paragraph, a few lines, that's also a challenge because then it's more difficult to cross-examine the complainant when you don't really have much from them. So, I mean, is too much disclosure like too much and sometimes not a good idea? I mean, time management wise, of course, it could
yeah.
be a problem.
I call it Stitchcomb's revenge.
Okay.
Uh, Stitchcomb says we get whatever we get, and it's as if fate has said, "All right, you're going to get what you get," and
Mhm.
we now get a lot. It can be good or bad depending on the case. It always
Yeah.
depends on the parts of the case. But what it always does is it makes it harder. So in some cases, it'll be advantageous to your client. In some
Yeah.
cases, it'll be a horrible disadvantage to your client. But what it will always do is be harder for you and me and
Well, it's
everyone else.
more time consuming, that's for sure. And sometimes clients can't afford to pay for all this extra time that we need to review. But speaking still about technology, so one
Mm,
thing that we've been seeing some lawyers have been a bit afraid of is AI, right? Like that is just slowly, gaining
creeping in.
prominence, and that could one day replace us. So what are your views on AI?
Uh, Depending on what year this is being watched, if it's 20 years from now, someone's watching this on YouTube, I'm going to say that I welcome our new AI overlords, and I'm very happy to work with them. I'm hoping that it doesn't come to that though.
Yeah.
Uh, Criminal defense, what we do, it's a different beast, and I'm not at the cutting edge of technology, so I don't know how it's going to ultimately affect how I do research, how I do writing, et cetera, et cetera. For me, I'm an old dog. I'm not going to learn a lot of new tricks. It's probably not going to affect my life very much. But at the end of the day, because criminal defense is such a different thing, an AI cannot do what I do, in the sense that an AI cannot cross-examine a police officer. An AI cannot cross-examine a 10-year-old witness on the stand who's discussing horrible things. So my expectation is that AI will have some role in what we
Mhm.
do, but that role will be limited because at the end of the day, I have to go into court and I have to call a cop a liar. AI cannot do that. They can't replicate that. So that's my view. I don't know. Time will tell, right?
Yeah, time will tell, but I mean, like, it's good that you have that confidence that even if it does advance, that it will never replace the actual human criminal
Yeah,
defense lawyer. So
yeah. And what we do, it's a business of humanity, right?
It's true.
Ultimately, we're talking about people and people's lives and who did what, and witnesses. They're all human beings. So it's a human business that we are in. And our business involves the frailties of humanity and the strengths of humanity. And ultimately,
Yeah.
we cannot allow AI to replace that. It's
Well,
not going to.
and even I would think from the client's perspective, sometimes clients they want to connect with their lawyers, right? Like, I mean, they retain the lawyer that they think is a good lawyer and who's going to do the job for them, but it's also someone they're able to connect with on a human or personal level. So, and I don't know if AI will ever become that intelligent that it will be able to connect with clients the way we do. But that's true. I mean, it is also, there's the human aspect that cannot be replaced, at least not for now.
Yeah, that's right. It's all fun and games until they gain sentience and try and destroy us all.
Yeah.
You saw Terminator.
Yeah, a long time ago, though.
That's what's going to happen. So it'll be fun.
But okay, so Harpreet, so what are some of the things also, because this is another thing that I've seen you tweet a lot about. You tend to tweet a lot about some practical, court tips on how to, for
Yeah.
example, file exhibits and other types of things. So what are some of the issues that you've noticed because you've been working a lot with new lawyers and you've invited them to come and watch you? What are some of the issues that you've seen some of the new lawyers struggle with and that they probably need to work on a bit more?
The basic mechanics. First of all, you're teaching me that I probably should tweet less because apparently I tweet about everything. But one area that oftentimes newer calls, I
Mhm.
should say, need help with are basic nuts and bolts mechanics of things,
Yes.
right? Because the Supreme Court of Canada can tell you about the test for a 276 application, but no Supreme Court justice has ever written about how to file an exhibit or where to
Right.
stand,
Right.
right? Or what to say when you're about to file an exhibit. These are things that we've already gone over it. You learn when you see it,
Yeah.
when someone shows you how to do it. Otherwise, you're clueless, right? You would have no idea. You're not going to read that in a manual.
Yeah.
You need someone to be able to say, all right, first you have to ask the witness, do you remember talking about XYZ with the police? And they'll say whatever they want to say. Would it assist you in refreshing your memory if you were to see a transcript of the statement that you gave to the police? Yes, it would. Your Honor, I'm going to put page 46 of the transcript and so on and so forth,
Hmm.
right? They're things that nuts and bolts things that you don't know until you've done it a couple of times. First, watch other people do it, and then you do it yourself.
Yeah.
There are shortcuts always, but I find that if you learn the long way to do it at first and you practice that, then you can start moving to the shortcuts.
Hmm.
But you need to learn the nuts and bolts first.
That's nice. So, so it's really mostly like the things that they need to focus on is really these uh, practices or these things that we have to do in court that we don't necessarily learn, in a case when we're reading a case or when we're reading about the law. So this is, and again, you're encouraging lawyers to go and watch other lawyers when they do these things in court. Harpreet, so I know we mentioned your Twitter account, but for people, a lot of people already follow you, but for those who don't follow you, what is your Twitter handle so that they can join and follow you if they watch this and they don't already do that?
It's at Saini Law, I think. SAINILAW. If you just Google Harpreet Sani and Twitter, it should come up. And then you'll see a lot of nonsense and some things that may be of assistance to you. A little bit of both.
There's, well, I can say that there's a lot of things that are of assistance for everyone, not just for new lawyers, but especially for new lawyers. And it's very nice that you're always mindful of that and that you're always thinking about them and you're inviting them to come and watch you in court. So that's really very nice. Not a lot of lawyers do that, but you're one of the few who do. And you do take the time to explain things to new lawyers. So I really encourage everyone to follow Harpreet if you don't already follow him. Where else can they find you other than Twitter, Harpreet?
CLA events, fall
Hmm.
conference, spring conference. I don't make it to every single one, but I try and go to that. If you are a criminal defense lawyer, I encourage you, if you're not already a member of the CLA, that you should join the CLA. Also, that you should join WiCCD as well if you are not already a member.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to find me. And other than that, you can find me in the Brampton Courthouse or somewhere in the hallways in the Toronto Courthouse as well. That's usually where I'll be.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much, Harpreet, for taking the time to chat with me today and to expand on your tweets.
Yeah.
And it's always very nice to see you, to chat with you, and to hear from you. And maybe we'll have another interview with you soon where we can talk more about some of the things that you tweet about.
Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk because old lawyers love to talk.
Thank you, Harpreet.